everybody, I'm Sherry Heiberg, the archivist here at Cloud Imperium Games, and welcome to another edition of Lore Maker's Guide to the Galaxy. For those who are not familiar with this program, this is a show that we do, whenever it's ready to be done, about the history and lore behind the systems in the Star Citizen universe. And today we are going to cover the Palace system. So this is Earth. So where we always start. I've already made that joke. It's a pretty sweet Earth, you might say. Wrong, etc., etc., etc. We all know the meme. So let's go to Palace. I requested this system specifically because of the history behind it and because of the stuff I've been working on lately relates to it. The Palace system, in the tradition of all Parry Line systems, was named after one of the gods of war. In this case, it was Pallas Athena. It's also known by a Xi'an name that I will get to later. Yeah, we'll get to that. So what makes this system interesting is that it is the site of humanity's first contact with the Xi'an in 2530. It is historically a Xi'an system. It became part of the Parry Line during the Xi'an-human Cold War, where it was abandoned by the Xi'an and humans alike and was kind of like a no man's land that served as a conflict space. For those who don't know about the Parry Line systems, that is what I just described. Sort of like borderlands between Xi'an and human space where conflicts were avoided very stringently, but military preparations did build up. So how did first contact go exactly between the Xi'an and humans? When we get to Palace 3, I will discuss that in detail, but in short, it did not go swimmingly. So let's just dive in right here. This is the star of the Palace system. For those of you who know much about stars, this is a G-type main sequence star, also known as yellow dwarf, also known as the star in the center of our solar system, which is a G-type. So they're common, but they're not too common. They're less common than, say, M-type and K-type, which are the red and orange spectral types. But what makes it so attractive to us is, of course, it's basically a twin of our own sun. So any terraformers who wanted to be interested in the system, they saw that and they're like, oh yeah, dollar signs. This is going to be totally successful. Humans are going to totally love this system. And some of you may be asking, why were human terraformers in a system that is owned by the Xi'an? Well, I guess we'll find out. This is Palace 1. It's an iron planet, sort of like Mercury. Some of the interesting things about iron planets, they have sort of a contentious origin story. Some people believe that they may have been terrestrial planets initially, but they orbited close enough to the sun that the mantle and the surface, the crust, was just totally blasted off, leaving nothing but the core floating in space, which is pretty cool. And some people argue that that could have been caused by a giant impact, so maybe a huge asteroid or a comet smashed into it and burned off all the dirt and left only the iron at the center. But I think it's probably more likely that it formed because the protoplanetary disk was iron-rich, and then, wow, iron planet, here it is. When I was looking up more interesting things to say about iron planets that I haven't already covered, I learned that Ben Bova, who wrote a book called World Building, called iron planets cannonball planets, which I think is pretty cool. Oh, and as a side note, the Xi'an have been mining this planet for a long time. It is under Xi'an jurisdiction, and currently it's marked for scientific mining only. So let's move around a little bit until we get to Palace 2, situated right here. Palace 2 is a small planet, not unlike Venus, which means it has a thick, high-pressure atmosphere that is totally inimical to the evolution of life. It's hostile, it's hot. Things melt and or explode on the surface. Even the Xi'an, whose terraforming technology is arguably far more advanced than ours, have no idea how to terraform a smog planet like this. And a smog planet a term that we've been using a lot in these videos. I've done some research into it, and I can't confirm that it's used by any astronomical bodies with any kind of naming authority, but I think it's a pretty descriptive name. It gets the point across. You say smog planet, you think, oh, terrestrial planet with thick, unfriendly Venusian atmosphere. At least that's what I think. Now, here is Pallas 3, the site of first contact between human and Xi'an. The thing about Pallas 3 is that it has a big underground fire. Why is it on fire? We don't exactly know, but we do have some ideas. You see, the Xi'an used this as kind of like a test bed for their terraforming technologies, so it's most likely that during the many, many experiments that have been performed over the years, a laser, say, hit an underground coal seam that seemed to be much, much larger than we even knew, and now a giant fire is burning underground under a good bit of the planet. That makes it, you know, it's cool looking, I guess, but it's not very friendly to life. So, in 2530, a human nav jumper discovered the Pallas system through the Baker jump point. And she decided that, you know, it was a time, it was like a time of unhindered exploration, which sounds cool, but it was also a time of unhindered regulation. The regulations were lax, and if they were enforced, it was very, very rarely. So it was very much a terraformer's market. And the discoverer of this system, whose name, let me just make sure I get this right, was, where is she? Catherine Segovia. She also saw dollar signs when she found this planet and auctioned this system, and auctioned the whole thing off to the highest bidder, which was Gaia Planetary Services. Now again, this was the days during the UPE, the United Planets of Earth, before the Messers, in the days of the, you know, the three-person government, high advocate, etc., and no one really cared what Segovia did. They only cared that the United Planets of Earth territory was continuing to expand as time went on. So Gaia Planetary Services, or Gaia Planet Services, my bad, was, they saw this, they saw the yellow sun at the center of the system, and they decided that they were going to terraform, and they weren't really going to inform the government about it. They went in and they started an initial survey for the best place for terraforming equipment, and were almost immediately captured by the Xi'an, all 276 of them. This created a hostage situation, and that was the first moment that human and Xi'an knew that the other existed. Xi'an had all the power in the confrontation. The humans did not have any power in the confrontation. And to make matters worse, the Gaia Planet Services really wanted to keep it a secret from the government for as long as possible, convinced that they could handle it on their own. But the foreman of the operation, whose name was Charles Baker, was eventually released back to his company's custody and was there to make the arguments to finally convince them to hand the situation over to the UPE. And after a month or so of conflict, eventually humans were released from the custody of the Xi'an, but not without humans having to disclose the entirety of the empire. So the Xi'an knew where all human settlements were, where all human potential settlements were, the extent of the UPE as it was in that day, and humans came away with nothing but their lives. Yeah, so you can see why from this first contact situation that it kind of set the tone for human-Xi'an relations for some time. Let's move on here. I'm going to zoom out. Whoa, unless I'm going to try to zoom out. There we go. See the Pallas Belt Alpha over here. It's another mineral-rich asteroid belt. Mining operations are active, but again, they're owned by the Xi'an, so you want to be careful about trying to stake a claim in there, lest you want to come under the jurisdiction of the Xi'an government. Xi'an, or maybe the Wrath, I should say, because they don't really have it open to other species. It's their system, you know? This is Pallas 4. It's a gas giant, pretty regular gas giant as far as gas giants go. What makes it interesting is that there's a pressurized research station in it, deep in the atmosphere, where there's a research station. The research station is run by the Xi'an. And it's far beyond the capabilities of what we humans know of for how you can have a pressurized research station that deep within the atmosphere of a planet. We would really like to know their secrets, but at this point, the Xi'an again have the upper hand. We believe they are researching ways to terraform smog planets. The last planet in the system, if I could find it, here we have Pallas V. Pallas V is a lonely little dwarf planet. Like Pluto, it circles the outskirts of the system. Unlike Pluto, it doesn't seem to have any moon friends at this moment, but as development continues and we keep adding more moons to systems to make systems more interesting and friendly to players, it is not outside the realm of possibility that there will be a moon for Pallas V one of these days. Thanks for sitting with me through this tour of the Pallas system. As a bonus for listening to me ramble a little bit about Xi'an history and the first contact situation, which I find so interesting, I am going to teach you the Xi'an name for the system. So it's kind of like a quick Xi'an lesson at this time. Now in Xi'an language, the name of the Pallas system is, let me just double check here so I get it right, is Huisen Hus Ung. Listen to me say that one more time. Huisen Hus Ung. It's a tonal language, so you need to pay attention to where your pitch is sitting when you talk. The huisen part is meant to be a more even tone. I have a little bit of trouble with that as an English speaker because we tend to add tones wherever we think it is appropriate in the sentence, kind of like iambic pentameter, a little stress, a little rest. But let's try this again. Huisen. Huisen. Hey, see, I got it. The next part of the phrase is the hus part. If you listen to me say it, you can hear it's kind of low pitch, hus. And the next part is ung, which is a high pitch, and the u is a double syllable. So let's say this slowly and then quickly. Huisen, hus, ung. You can put it together, and it's huisen, hus, ung. There you go. That is a phrase in Xi'an that you now know. I wouldn't say it in front of other Xi'an until you have better proficiency, but now the knowledge is yours. And enjoy. Thanks again for everything. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Pallas system in Loremaker's Guide of the Galaxy. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.